I'm not here to lie. The reason why I wanted you guys to come here and do the interview here is to show you exactly where everything took place. And to show people that this is what happened. All the stuff that people, all the rumors and accusations about us murdering the kids and burying them on the property, this place has been searched thoroughly. The well has been checked, the septic tank.
I think everything Janie McKenzie just said is true, but not the whole truth. So in today's video, let's watch the rest of her CBC interview about her missing step-grandchildren, Lily and Jack Sullivan. It was just a vague declaration of past intent. Anyway, I think you get the point. So let's pick up where we left off with Janie beginning to search for Lily and Jack after, and note this, being told by Malaya that they were missing before Malaya had even asked her if she knew where the kids were or had even searched the trailer that Janie was in.
When she told me the kids were missing, you automatically think they went into the woods. That was my first instinct. So I went up and I did this whole area, this whole wooded area, right up to the top of the dirt road, came back down here and came back down the side of the road, came back down here and came back up the same spot. I went back into the house by the time the cops were here. I don't know exactly what time, I didn't take my phone. The cops were here. There was a bench sitting here, or a sawhorse, it's over there, was sitting here. I was sitting on it, bawling my eyes out. I was crying because I blame myself for not getting up that morning to see the kids. Because if I would have got up, this wouldn't have never happened. Okay? That's why I was crying.
We've heard a lot about the patio door.
Okay.
Yeah, so let's go see that.
Sure.
So this is the patio
This is the patio door.
that Jack and Lily would have
That Jack and Lily came out of.
Okay. And so tell us why we've heard about the patio door.
Because everybody's saying on Facebook, on YouTube, on TikTok that the patio door makes a noise. And why they didn't hear the door open. The bedroom is back there. Okay?
That far window.
The last window is the bedroom.
The reason people talk about how much noise that sliding glass door makes is because Malaya Brooks Murray, Lily and Jack's mom, used it as part of her alibi. According to her, it's completely silent, which is why she didn't recognize that her toddlers, Lily and Jack Sullivan, had wandered off outside on their own. So the fact that it does make a noise pokes yet another hole in her story. But her story's already a slice of Swiss cheese, so it's not that interesting. What's more interesting is Janie's reaction. I would have expected a truly innocent person to be at least a little bit suspicious about that. Malaya's entire alibi hinges on whether or not that door makes noise.
They insisted it was an honest conversation, but a deception analyst says the interview raises red flags. Inconsistent details, possible staged evidence, and statements that don't line up with observable facts. Hit subscribe and turn on the bell to get verified updates as investigators test every claim and analysts parse each new development. A deception analyst has publicly scrutinized Janie McKenzie's interview with CBC, framing the conversation as a case study in how small inconsistencies and mismatched physical claims can create reasonable questions for investigators. In the interview, Janie repeatedly insisted she was not lying, even as she acknowledged gaps in her knowledge about key movements and timings. That tension, an emphatic denial of falsehood paired with admitted uncertainty, is exactly the sort of posture analysts flag as worth closer inspection. People under stress often speak with emotional candor and can honestly misremember details. That's both a human reality and a reason investigators cross-check recollections with physical evidence. The analyst's point is not to brand Janie as dishonest, but to show how her words and admitted limits to her knowledge open multiple lines of inquiry, which details are first-hand recollection, which are second-hand reports, and which may have been formed later when memory consolidated under stress. Where a witness or participant states strong certainty about something later contradicted by physical layout or independent observation, that contradiction becomes an instrumental clue investigators must test. Authorities' thorough search of the property, including the well, septic, barns, RV, and trailer, forms the bedrock of the physical side of the investigation, and it's important to place Janie's statements against that clear factual baseline. Investigators followed leads to every reasonably accessible place on the acreage, documenting conditions and collecting trace evidence when appropriate. That exhaustive property check matters because if someone's account claims key movement or concealment in a location that was later found to be undisturbed, it either raises questions about timing, did the movement happen earlier or later, or suggests the claimed event did not occur as described. The analyst highlights that careful inventories and mapping of search locations can quickly reveal where verbal accounts diverge from environmental reality. In practical terms, a claim that something was removed from a well or hidden in a barn can be corroborated or refuted by the presence of recent disturbance, tool marks, or trace materials, but only if those areas were documented thoroughly, which investigators in this case report they did. Janie's account that she combed the woods and found a child's footprint by the patio is one of the story's most vivid personal recollections, and it deserves careful parsing. A footprint near a patio can be significant if its size, depth, and direction suggest recent movement away from the home. Forensic specialists would want to cast and photograph such an impression in situ, measure dimensions, document substrate conditions, and cross-reference it with shoe sizes known to be relevant. The analyst points out that recall of finding a footprint is emotionally powerful and memorable, but also vulnerable to contamination. Once the idea of a print exists in community conversation, other observers can reinterpret ordinary marks as the remembered footprint. Investigators must therefore confirm whether the footprint was recovered, cast, and entered into evidence, or whether it remains an anecdotal memory. If it was properly documented, it becomes a testable fact. If not, it functions more as an indicator, something that motivated searches but not a sealed piece of forensic proof. One particularly concrete point the analyst seized on is Janie's description of the sliding patio door and whether it makes noise, a detail which intersects directly with an alibi offered by Malaya Brooks Murray. Malaya's account reportedly depends in part on the implication that the patio door could have been left open or closed without making a sound, which would allow certain movements to go unnoticed. Janie's statement that the door in fact does make a noticeable noise undercuts that silently convenient narrative. Physical acoustics are measurable. A sliding door with a loose frame, a warped track, or a stiff latch will often produce a scrape or click that nearby listeners notice. If Janie's observation is accurate, then the purported noiseless entry or exit becomes less plausible, which pushes investigators to probe timing claims harder. The analyst's observation here is methodological. Small material facts, the sound a door makes, the light a porch emits at night, can be decisive when reconstructed against witness timelines. That's why crime scene analysts and interviewers annotate these mundane details. They either corroborate or complicate memory-based timelines. Malaya's alibi, then, hangs on the detail of that door's noiselessness, and the analyst emphasizes how fragile alibis often depend on such small assumptions. In many missing person inquiries, an alibi is not a single statement but a network of ordinary facts: who saw whom, what doors were open, whether a vehicle was running, that together create coherence. If a cornerstone fact, like the silent patio door, is tested and found inaccurate, the coherence phrase, and investigators must reevaluate the timeline, check for additional witnesses, and re-examine scene documentation. That recalibration does not instantly produce guilt. It does, however, transform an alibi from a stable claim to a provisional narrative needing further proof. Janie's emotional reaction in the interview, crying and blaming herself for not checking on the children, adds a human dimension that analysts caution against reading as evidentiary. Strong emotion can be genuine grief, remorse, or the shock response of someone trying to make sense of a terrible situation. The analyst is careful to highlight that displays of contrition or anguish are not evidentiary proof of innocence or guilt. They do, however, have two practical effects. They make the speaker's testimony more rhetorically persuasive to the public, and they complicate interview strategy for investigators. An emotionally devastated witness may not reliably recount sequences under stress. They may confabulate or conflate moments. Interviewers must therefore balance compassion with structured, non-leading questioning, and corroborate emotional testimony with objective anchors like phone logs, timestamps, or third-party observations. Another detail raised by Janie, that she raked at night to level ground for a proposed pool, prompted the analyst to flag the claim as questionable on its face. Raking to level ground is a visible, messy activity that leaves easily identifiable marks, tire tracks, shifted soil, and altered leaf litter. Doing such work at night is unusual and would likely involve a light source, a vehicle, or other footprints. If Janie's nighttime raking occurred, it should leave traces investigators could verify. The analyst's point is not to accuse, but to show how a specific, verifiable claim that is easily tested can function as a litmus test for the broader narrative's reliability. Inconsistencies about routine tasks are often telling. Either they reflect faulty memory, the passage of time blurring ordinary tasks, or they suggest deliberate post hoc narrative construction. Janie described becoming fearful and isolated after social media accusations alleging murder and burial, a social reality that affects many people drawn into publicized missing person cases. The analyst notes that public accusation and online harassment can have real psychological consequences. People withdraw, they avoid public spaces, and they may change behaviors that then appear suspicious. This creates a difficult dynamic for investigations. The social environment may cause people to alter routines or hide from media, not because they are guilty, but because they fear mistaken blame or harassment. At the same time, online speculation can also mask or amplify real evidence problems. Investigators must therefore separate harassment-driven behavior from actions that could be practically relevant to the case. Social media pressure is also why analysts and investigators urge restraint and reliance on verified information rather than crowdsourced accusations. From the analyst's vantage point, the possibility of a family cover-up or coordinated omission is a scenario that must be considered but not assumed. Analysts compare patterns of coordinated silence, similar wording across multiple accounts, synchronized retractions, or shared narrative pivots to known instances where groups attempted to mislead investigators. Yet the analyst is also explicit that coordinated behavior can arise from panic, solidarity, or fear rather than malice. The analytical task is discriminating. Are matching statements the result of rehearsed collusion, or are they benign echoes from shared trauma? That distinction matters legally and morally, and is why investigators work slowly, testing whether coordinated statements survive objective cross-examination and whether physical evidence supports or contradicts them. Finally, the analyst draws comparisons to other cases where alleged evidence was later found to be planted. These historical parallels show how planted evidence typically unravels under detailed forensic and temporal scrutiny. Inconsistent soil layering in a dug patch, fresh versus old imprint differences, or fibers and trace materials that mismatch expected provenance. The analyst's value here is interpretive. When someone claims a twig was just there but the twig's position shows signs of deliberate placement, a forensic excavation will reveal it. That's why Janie's claims about footprints, raking, and where items were found become focal points. They are testable against what the land actually shows. Takeaways are practical and solemn. Inconsistencies in testimony can indicate omission or error without proving intent. Every factual claim should be independently verified before the public draws conclusions. Emotional displays are human and expected, but they do not replace methodical corroboration. When physical evidence is claimed, independent, transparent verification is essential for credibility. Attempted staging, when it exists, typically collapses under forensic analysis, but distinguishing staged from coincidental requires patient, exacting work. Above all, clear, calm communication from investigators and disciplined preservation of original evidence by witnesses are the concrete steps that can restore public trust and move this painful situation toward resolution. We will continue to monitor verified developments and explain what they mean in plain language. For now, investigators must test every claim against the physical record and the digital trace left by cameras and devices, while the public should resist speculation and preserve original materials for authorities to examine. This case shows how small details, a noisy patio door, a footprint, a rake line in the earth, can become the fulcrum of an entire investigation. Careful verification, not noise, will deliver the answers the community needs.